Let me play the back and forth with Michael Cohen, who let the cat out of the bag about a mystery probe, and I want to ask you about it on the other side.
When was the last communication with President Trump or someone acting on his behalf?
I don't have the specific date, but it was a while ago.
And what did he or his agent communicate to you?
Unfortunately, this topic is actually something that's being investigated right now by the Southern District of New York, and I've been asked by them not to discuss and not to talk about these issues.
Fair enough. Is there any other wrongdoing or illegal act that you are aware of regarding Donald Trump that we haven't yet discussed today?
Yes, and again, those are part of the investigation that's currently being looked at by the Southern District of New York.
Well, Carol, it certainly got our eyes perked up. I'm sure yours, given how competitive we all are about trying to untangle what they're investigating of the president. But that seemed to be indications of a new probe.
Well, remember, Chuck, I'm glad you seized upon this moment because it is an important one. We have written at the Washington Post, as have other news outlets, about an investigation of the Trump inaugural. And we've also looked very deeply at requests that the Southern District of New York has made of the Trump Organization for other records and inquiries they've made. Meanwhile, we have a lot of sources who are saying that prosecutors are flitting around the Trump Organization, looking more closely at that organization and possible fraud, possible, let's just call them eccentricities of accounting. So,
well, didn't it? Let me interrupt you here. It was funny you say this. When Michael Cohen brought the two checks, and one came from the Revocable Trust and one came from Donald Trump, Inc., and then he said it came from Trump Organization, it sounds like there's some financial fraud or tax fraud that may have been committed by the Trump Organization in calendar year 2017.
So I feel like a lot of what Michael said about that check has been reported in many other pages of ours and other news organizations. I did not find that really that shocking because we wrote about it when he pled guilty. I do find it curious that so many different former and current prosecutors whisper to us at the Washington Post about what they believe to be Donald Trump's biggest vulnerability, and that is actions he and his family members took at Trump Organization. Now, that's not a news story you publish. That is like stuff you hear, and we don't know exactly what Michael is referring to, but it strikes me that if it's in the Southern District, it has to do with the Trump Organization. And I found it also really interesting that Michael talked about when was the last time you spoke with Donald Trump, and that conversation is a subject he can't discuss because it's part of the investigation. That tells you a little bit.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Beat the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.